these are low or high energy phosphates. So let's look at the high energy phosphates. Okay. So going back here, that's ADP. That's already one phosphate. To make this into ATP, so you get a phosphate higher than 7.3. So you may use phosphoenol pyruvate, you may use creatine phosphate, which is in the muscle. No? So that's 10.3. You can get that phosphate and add to ADP to become ATP again. So that the reaction goes this way. So you must have a high energy phosphate. And that high energy phosphate, you can get it from here, from here, from here, from here, or even from here. Because that's already 7.7. So you can add that one phosphate to ADP to become ATP. Or you can get this phosphate here to add to ADP to become ATP. That's high energy phosphate. Those below this cannot replace, because that's only 5. That's only 4. It's 3. That's 3 here. That's 2. Cannot replace, those phosphate cannot replace the phosphate that is lost in ADP. Can you get that? Huh? Okay. This, what do you call this sign? Anybody? This is in your computer. You have that sign there in your computer, right? In your keys of your computer on the left side, below escape. You do not know? That's a tilde sign in your computer. But this sign in your bioenergetics, this is known as the squiggle. Squiggle, that one, means high energy phosphate bond. High energy phosphate bond. Look at this. This phosphate here does not have a squiggle. That is just an ester bond. Okay? All right. All right. When ATP donates its phosphate there, ATP becomes ADP. So this is how it looks like. Minus 1 phosphate here. I have here 1, 2, 3. This has only 1, 2. Okay. The phosphate release is stabilized by the formation of resonance hybrid, in which the 3 negative charges are shared between 4 oxygen atoms. Okay. Here you are. ATP acts as the energy currency of the cell. So what is our Philippine currency?
Peso.
Very good. American currency is the dollar. No? All right. So our currency for energy is ATP. Huh? So this is how the cell use. They do not use peso or dollar. They use ATP. Okay? Oh, here is now how your ATP is being used in the ATP cycle, ATP cycle. Okay. ATP cycle. All right. So you remember this? Creatine phosphate. Diba? Phosphoenol pyruvate, 1,3-biphosphoglycerate. All they have produce high energy phosphate bonds. And they are utilized to add to ADP to become ATP. To become ATP. And this ATP is being used for phosphorylation reaction. Adding to glucose becomes glucose 6-phosphate. No? Adding to glycerol, glycerol 3-phosphate. To glucose, to add 2 phosphates, 1,6-biphosphate. And other phosphorylation reactions and endergonic processes or reactions that cannot occur unless energy is supplied. Okay? So that high energy is added to your creatine. Your creatine here becomes creatine phosphate. And you have that storage of creatine phosphate in your muscle. So that when the muscle contracts, creatine phosphate is released because every time the muscle contracts, ATP is used and you produce ADP. And to regenerate that ADP, that phosphate from creatine is added to ADP to become ATP again. And these are your sources of high energy phosphate bonds, oxidative phosphorylations. Okay? All right, 3 major sources of high energy phosphate taking part in energy conservation or energy capture. First is your oxidative phosphorylation. This is in your respiratory chain. You know what your respiratory chain? No? You remember in your class in your kindergarten, you were told that there are 2 kinds of respiration. You have external and internal respiration. External, you can observe it. Your lungs are expanding and deflating. But your internal, you cannot see it. The internal respiration is the utilization of oxygen now to become water. And this is through your respiratory chain or electron transport chain. So this is inside your mitochondrion. an organelle in the cell. So that becomes internal respiration. So our in our schedule, we will be talking about respiration, the block on respiration, uh, physiology and biochemistry, uh, respiration. So this is the respiratory chain or electron transport chain. Okay. So another source of high energy phosphate capture is glycolysis. Innate formation of two high energy phosphate results from the formation of lactate from one molecule of glucose generated in two reactions catalyzed by phosphoglycerate kinase and pyruvate kinase, respectively. Okay. You are also told in your kindergarten chemistry that there are two kinds of glycolysis: aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic glycolysis produces more than two high energy phosphates. So this one is anaerobic because end product is lactic acid. Okay. And the third is citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle or tricarboxylic acid cycle. Citric acid cycle. Okay. Oh, here are reactions. So this is a reaction that is found in your muscles. The muscle contains creatine. And if there's plenty of ATP, because you are well fed, this creatine are converted to creatine phosphate, in which you have a high energy phosphate there. And this is stored in the muscles. So when the muscle is contracting and ATP is low, the creatine phosphate are now being utilized to phosphorylate ADP to become ATP. Okay? All right. Here's another reaction. Glycerol plus ATP or adenosine triphosphate catalyzed by glycerol kinase. Whenever you have an enzyme that ends in kinase, that means phosphorylation reaction. Phosphorylation reaction, meaning a phosphate is added. So here is glycerol, an ATP. Through a kinase, glycerol kinase, this phosphate is removed and added to glycerol. So you have now glycerol 3-phosphate plus the remnant of ATP, adenosine diphosphate. Okay. ATP allows decoupling of thermodynamically unfavorable reactions to favorable ones. So that is your endergonic reaction requiring energy, and the energy that is being used comes from ATP. Okay, so this is glycerol phosphorylation, no, utilizing ATP. There you are. So you have now glycerol 3-phosphate. This becomes now a reactive compound, glycerol 3-phosphate. This one is not reactive. Glycerol 3-phosphate is because it's on the number 3 carbon. The phosphate is in the number 3 carbon, so glycerol 3-phosphate, it becomes a reactive compound. Okay. All right. So ATP allows coupling of thermodynamically unfavorable reactions to favorable ones. So look at this. EMP loses already 2 of its high energy phosphate. So this cannot supply any more high energy phosphate. It reacts with ATP. So 1 phosphate is added to that, and that makes it ADP. So we have now 2 ADP. This is catalyzed by adenyl cyclase. Adenylyl cyclase. Oh, cyclase naman, I'm sorry. Adenylyl kinase. Adenylyl kinase is important for maintenance of energy homeostasis in cells because it allows 1, 2, 3 there. Group transfer potential and ATP to be used in synthesis of ATP. AMP forms as consequence of activating reactions ATP to rephosphorylate to ADP. AMP to increase concentration when ATP becomes depleted so that it is able to react in metabolic as a signal to increase the rate of downhill reactions. Downhill reactions or exergonic reactions is catabolic reactions. Reactions that produces energy, which in turn lead to the generation of more ATP. Now remember, catabolic reaction releases energy and it is captured in the form of ATP. The opposite of that is anabolic reactions or an uphill reaction. Anabolic reactions require ATP so that anabolic processes will proceed. When ATP forms AMP, inorganic pyrophosphate is produced. Sa ni pag sakas taas. When ATP forms AMP, inorganic pyrophosphate is produced. ATP can also be hydrolyzed directly to AMP with the release of PPI or pyrophosphate. This occurs, for example, in fatty acid. ATP plus coenzyme A plus a fatty acid or organic acid R, COOH. This is a general formula for organic acids. Now this is a coenzyme known as coenzyme A. Okay? Activating this fatty acid, because fatty acid are usually inert, is to add a phosphate. No? Add a phosphate or add a coenzyme A. But this requires energy coming from here. So we have here acyl-CoA synthetase. So the fatty acid, this one, is here with the coenzyme A attached to it. And what is spent? Two high energy phosphate bonds. Pyrophosphate is removed from ATP, so that ATP becomes now just AMP. See, this is activation of fatty acid. Before you can utilize your fatty acid, it must be activated by adding a coenzyme A, and that would require ATP. And the energy requirement is high because your ATP becomes AMP. The two phosphates are removed. Okay. Now to split this, you need a pyrophosphatase to split this to form more energy. Okay. A combination of the above reactions, the one that we're talking about, makes it possible for phosphate to be recycled and the adenine nucleotide to interchange. Okay. You have your acyl-CoA synthetase that produces your fatty acid CoA. All right. That uses up ATP, releasing pyrophosphate. Pyrophosphate is acted upon by pyrophosphatase. So it is broken down to inorganic phosphates. And these inorganic phosphates then can be utilized to form into ATP again. Now, with ADP plus a phosphate, that becomes ATP. All right. Other nucleoside triphosphate participate in the group transfer. Okay, like for example, UDP, uridine diphosphate. This is what they call cousins of your ATP. This phosphate is added to it, so it becomes UTP, uridine triphosphate. And your ATP becomes ADP. And the enzyme is nucleoside diphosphate kinase. Okay. Are you still awake?
Yes, Doc.
Opo, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Okay, how many hours have we had already? 1 hour and a half already?
1 hour 47.
Yes,
Tired na?
Yes,
Are you
Doc.
tired?
Yes, Doc. Gutom na, Doc.
Saturated na? Saturated na ang brain?
Information
Yes,
overload, Doc.
Super saturated.
Sige. So,
Kautason na, Doc. Kautason na.
What?
Thank you, Doc.
So, we'll just continue chapter 12 next time.
Thank you, Doc.
Sige. Hinahinayon talang ni.